That's the single most important question. The swift resolution that Trump hoped for appears unlikely, not because the Iranians are not on the ropes, but because Trump's objectives appear unattainable to a large number of people. Trump has said that the US with Israel will weaken the regime in Tehran to the point that it will not, or it will melt away. And if it does not, it will be so smashed, so degraded, that the Iranian people will take to the streets to overthrow it. In other words, regime change is the logical endpoint. Of course, Trump and his fellow cabinet ministers have been flipping and flopping. Are we with regime change? Are we not? But finally he says he wants to go the whole way. Why drag the entire Gulf into a war only to leave the mullahs in power? Let them continue, even if they are on their lease, doesn't obviate the original problem. In time, they will regroup and attempt to clandestinely build Iran's nuclear weapons program back up to where it is today. So regime change is the only desirable option as far as the US and Israel are concerned. But are Israel and US anywhere near affecting a regime change in Iran? Not by a long stretch, with Trump ruling out putting boots on the ground and instead opting for long-range precision missile strikes. But nowhere in the world has a purely aerial operation ousted authoritarians. Knowing that they can't be yanked out of office, the mullahs have hunkered down. Their best bet is to wait it out and move away from direct confrontation. Tehran is framing the conflict as a war of endurance, not immediate victory. Figures such as Ali Larijani have cast it as a test of staying power, betting that Iran can sustain between 60 to 90 days of high-intensity confrontation and gradually shift Washington's cost-benefit calculus. Tactically, not unlike Ukraine, that was also fighting a Goliath in the shape of Russia, Iran too appears to be taking an asymmetrical, layered approach, targeting enemy radar first, exhausting their air defenses with drones and low-cost missiles. This tactic allows the Iranians to preserve advanced systems for later phases. Iran is activating proxy partners gradually, pressuring energy infrastructure and maritime routes to stretch enemy defenses. The tactic is creating chaos. The Strait of Hormuz is shut. Energy supplies are disrupted. Countries are sweating money, cash. Investors are fidgety. Expats, the backbone of the US states, are wanting to go home. It has turned into a war of attrition. Does another potential war without end loom? Fundamental question, is Iran Trump's Ukraine, viewers? It's a question that I'm going to pose tonight to all our guests. Tom Cooper, the world's #1 military analyst, is with me on the table, and he's been here with us gaming this entire war from day one. Major General G.D. Bakshi, defense expert, is here with us. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author. Mehek Cook, Republican strategist, also here with us. And Tatiana Kukareva, Russian journalist, who we have had on the show many a times, is here with us. So I want to first bring in the two military experts, and I want to first begin with General Bakshi. General Bakshi, we salute you. You've always been at the forefront of expressing the sharpest opinion in this country. So I'm going to ask you a very straightforward question tonight. As a man who has been in combat, taken a bullet for the country, I want to ask you, from your experience, looking at this war very closely, is Ukraine trap emerging for Trump? Is Iran going to become Trump's Ukraine? Could that be a possibility?
It could be. It is already actualizing. Look, there has been overreach on the part of the United States, Israel. They thought that a very effective first strike on 28 February that decapacitated 48 top leaders of Iran would bring Iran to its knees and they could do a Venezuela redux.
Wow.
Nothing of that sort has happened, because before the Americans struck, the Iranians had already worked out their counter strategy, which was to decentralize their command and control, to delegate to the 31 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps districts. Don't forget, the Iranian missiles are all over the country. They are not focused in any one particular area. They are deep underground. Their whole cities underground, with multiple exit tunnels from which the launchers can go out, fire and come back. They could sustain this from their mountain hideouts for months. And therefore it was no surprise. Within 1 hour of this so-called decapacitating strike, the Iranian had started hitting back. 70 missiles on the first day on American targets, on Israeli targets. Primarily they were hitting the radars. They were trying to blind them, right? Then very night they fired about 200 plus missiles again. They had started initially with 6 Gulf countries where there were American bases. They have widened it to 9. They have launched 2 attacks on the Abraham Lincoln. Don't forget, the Abraham Lincoln was first within the Gulf of Hormuz. When the Americans got very worried about this being sunk, they took it out of the Gulf of Hormuz and into the Gulf of Oman. And yesterday, when it was hit by 4 ballistic missiles, they say that they were able to shoot them all down. To my mind, the Iranians were now just zeroing in. They were just zeroing in. They were trying to gauge reaction, record all that telemetry so that they could perfect the strike. Look, Rahul, one proper full-scale hit on an American aircraft carrier, that means 5,000 sailors down, right? Even if they don't get an aircraft carrier, there are 3 destroyers,
right,
Aegis class, Arleigh Burke class, in the Gulf of Hormuz. One goes down, 250 to 300 American sailors down. This is a midterm election years. Body bags in this year can cost Donald Trump very dear.
Okay.
Very extremely costly it would be.
There are various...
The Gulf of Hormuz is already blocked. Already blocked. The price of oil is going to hit $100 a barrel. It is going to hit the economies of Europe, of America itself, of India, Japan, China, South Korea. We all have a stake that this nonsense stops at the earliest.
Yeah.
We must focus on our national interest.
Big one.
We are not the fan club of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Right? And even though we are very friendly with Israel, there is a state at which we have to count the costs to our national security.
I think you put it so wonderfully.
We have friendly ties with both.
We cannot
afford... We have
afford...
friendly ties with both.
Yes.
India should take the lead in getting this
lead.
to stop.
We have to, because we can't afford a long, protracted fight, just as the US and Israel can't. Let's be very honest, viewers. And I want to turn to this camera and I want to take my friend here, Tom Cooper, to that big wall, because what we're going to show you, viewers, is something that you haven't seen till now. And I'm going to show you a map that's going to tell you what really is happening. Tom, what are we seeing? These big red dots, how are they? What are they? How have they been captured? What do they tell us?
This is a map that was eventually published by Israeli think tank ENSS, based on, between others, satellite photographs of areas where there were, in the last 4 days, there were bigger fires registered.
So you're saying that these are special satellites that capture areas where there are big fires?
Yeah, for example,
this is Israel,
bush fires. This is Israel, yes.
I mean, this looks as if it's completely burning.
And Israel and southern Lebanon.
So Israel and southern Lebanon,
Beirut,
viewers,
for example, is up here.
These are the boundaries of Israel.
No, of Lebanon.
Of
here,
Lebanon.
Right,
and that's Israel.
That's Israel, yes.
And so you have a situation where there are some big fires in both areas.
Yes. Up here and
in
then
both
in central,
areas.
this is Tel Aviv.
This is Tel Aviv. This looks as if it's not a one-way street. This is a fight that is also being fought in Israel itself.
Yep.
And now you look at Iran,
Yep.
and you look at Kuwait, and you look at Riyadh. These are lesser intensity fires. The red ones are really big that have raged for 24 hours or maybe even longer, right?
I'm not sure how long, but
Yes.
it's interesting to see. We have Bahrain here, Qatar, we have United Arab Emirates and the tip of Oman up here, also heavily hit.
And this red area,
No.
this is
This is
Dubai?
This is Dubai, this is Abu Dhabi, and this
Yes.
is the Hormuz Strait.
The Hormuz Strait.
And then along the coast, several objects have been hit obviously.
And this is, of course, Iran. We expect to see heavy fires in Iran because of the bombardment. But what we didn't expect was this picture, and we didn't expect this whole picture, because this tells us this whole picture. This tells us that there has been a fair amount of Iranian strike back.
Yes, for example, indeed, we can follow Bushehr. This is one
Yes.
of the biggest ports in northern Persian Gulf. We can follow, for example, Bandar Abbas in this area, and obviously the Americans striking Iranian missile sites around the coast, which are firing at Bahrain and Qatar. Plus here Shabaha.
Chabahar, yes. So all of this, viewers, is a theater, and this is all being captured now by these satellites. Let's go back there and let's talk a little bit about. So, Tom, are we to suggest, and are you telling me that perhaps at the end of the day, this is not the easy in and out war that we were thinking it was going to be?
This is obvious from the start. The Iranians are firing many more missiles than they used to fire, for example, in June last year. In June last year, maximum was something like 50 a day at Israel. In this case, they are firing so many that Israel is not even reporting exactly how many missiles are fired at Israel and striking Israel.
But how many missiles does Iran have? We believe they have a limited stockpile, so can they just carry on? And what happens when they run out of missiles? That's the end of them, isn't it?
Last year, they didn't run out of ballistic missiles that could hit or that could reach Israel even after 12 days of war. But the Israelis were out of anti-ballistic missiles, not only the Israelis, the Americans were out of anti-ballistic missiles after 7 or 8 days of war. And the Americans have spent a quarter of their stocks of anti-ballistic missiles just to defend Israel last year in June.
Okay.
Therefore, things are not looking good for a specific side in this case.
Well, we'll get into whether regime change is possible just with aerial strikes a little later with Tom and another top military expert. We're going to bring that conversation onto the table in about 10 to 12 minutes. But I want to go across to Mehek Kook, who joins me from America. We also have Tatiana Kukureva and Dr. Ranganathan, who are yet to speak. So, Ms. Kook, let me bring you into the conversation and ask you simply this. Are the Americans a little lost?
The direct answer is no. I mean, we have been very clear. For 5 decades, we have watched Iran wage a terror war, not only against their allies in the Gulf that are no longer allies today, against every single country, including the United States of America. We have lost thousands of American citizen lives, troops, and then there was an assassination attempt on President Trump. Let's not forget that. So as we look at this, we have been very clear. This is not about a regime change. Look at the way we targeted attacks.
Hello.
We took out the supreme leader. We took out over 49 top military officials. And then on top of that, we have been targeted in not only the airways, but in U.S., in some of the port areas as well. The Strait of Hormuz is extremely important for us to protect. And when you talk about oil prices today, this is how India can protect itself. If we actually have a strategic alliance and peace, then we won't see the fluctuations of oil prices that, by the way, have been occurring since 1979. It has been consistent. And the only way to achieve peace, not only for the United States, but for the geopolitical sphere that we're talking about today, is to make sure that we don't have nuclear weapons in Iran. They have been stockpiling nuclear weapons. They did not come to Geneva in good faith. They refused to work with the United States, and we have to draw a very clear line in the sand. And for anybody who thinks that we're not actually succeeding, I mean, This is day 4. Look at what we accomplished in 24 hours. I think every ally, including India, should be on board and supporting us so we can actually achieve peace in the Middle East and economic prosperity for all of
Well,
our
let me
people.
tell you that the Indian government is supporting Israel and the United States in this endeavor. That has pretty much been made clear because we haven't come out and condemned, like some other countries have, the killing of Khamenei. So, and there's a lot of pressure on the Indian Prime Minister to do that. So the Indian Prime Minister is not doing that, which should be.
And nor should he. I mean, you have a terror leader.
That's up to us to decide. Thank you very much. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but that's up to us for us to decide. But I just want to ask you this. If it's not going to be regime change, then these mullahs are not going anywhere. They'll regroup, they'll be back. They might, for the sake of it, for optics, sit across a table, have a perfunctory conversation with you, but they'll be back to doing what they do best, which is terrorizing their public, jailing their women and young youth activists, killing Kurds, and sponsoring terror, and also developing a nuclear weapon. Let me tell you that, because they are driven by something greater than just the need for power. This is an ideological fight against the West, and they've said it in as many ways and as many words. So I want to ask you, why are you going to give them this opportunity to regroup? Put troops on the ground. Take them out, like you did in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, we don't need to put troops on the ground today. I mean, the fact is that we have our capabilities between Israel, ballistic missiles, and all of our defense.
No, is the United States scared?
American troops
is the
on the
U.S.
ground
scared
today.
of putting troops on the ground? I'll tell you why. Because about 5 or 6 months ago, you waged a 12-day war against Iran. And these mullahs were back to the point where you've had to return with a whole bunch of new weapons, with the largest deployment in decades, to take them out.
Well,
and
that's
they'll
not
be back
accurate.
again.
We actually took out their nuclear facility during that 12 days. So we have continued to ramp up efforts to actually destabilize their regime. And when you talk about the fact that these individuals are extremely motivated, you're basically saying, sit back and do nothing. Wait for Trump's 4 years and then the next president to come in and for us to go back and forth for another 50 years where we're all held hostage. And that's unacceptable. There are ways for us not to put troops on the ground and to still wage war, to work with our allies. And by the way, the Gulf states have all been attacked by Iran, so they're getting involved. The Saudis have come out strongly and said that they're actually going to be pushing back and they're going to be defending the region.
Wow. So viewers, this entire area that prided itself in being relatively stable now is plunged in chaos. Oil prices are shooting through the roof. Oil prices are shooting through the roof. City-states like Kuwait and Abu Dhabi that promised that there would be an oasis of tranquility and peace and built their new economies by attracting capital and moving away from fossil fuels to the tune of about 70% of their GDP, are today very worried because the moment a drone passes by, everyone freezes and work stops. Viewers, their economies splutter to a halt and investors look for the exit door. That's what's going to happen, viewers. All these Gulf nations with their towering, shimmering, glitzy skyscrapers are going to find that those office spaces will be wide open. There'll be nobody working there. And that miracle will collapse, and it will collapse, viewers, into abjectness and instability. So we'll create another problem. That's what many people think. It's not my opinion. This is what many people think. And I'm just going to bring in Tatiana Kukureva. Tatiana Kukureva, Ms. Kuk says, look, we're doing what the world wants us to do. We're doing the best by the people of Iran. We're taking out this horrible regime, which it is. It's a horrible regime. And one is glad that it's happening. But was this operation not thought through? And why isn't Russia helping the West in also sorting this out?
Well, first of all, Rahul, I love that you brought up Afghanistan. And this is a perfect example, really, of America putting boots on the ground in an effort to try and take out a fundamentalist hardline regime. Those 20 years and thousands of American troops lost in that battle reversed in 1 year. Might I remind you who's in power in Afghanistan right now? It's the same Taliban that the US spent 20 years on trying to combat. And this is the reality right here, right now. We can talk the big talk about trying to topple a fundamentalist government. But the fact of the matter is, when you take out the head of a state in a targeted killing, you don't topple a regime. You kill a person. You give the nation, you give every single supporter of that regime an enemy, two enemies, in fact. You completely confirm the philosophy behind it. And I said it a couple of days ago to an Israeli speaker, and I will say it again. The fact that the Iranian regime was saying, look, we need to eliminate Israel because it is a threat to Iran, well, now you have actual proof that Israel, along with the US, can come in and kill the leader of a state. This is not about the fact that, whether Khamenei was good or bad. This is, again, as you said, rightfully so, this is not our place to decide. It is for Iranians to decide whether he's good or bad. He is the supreme leader of a country. The fact is that there is already a replacement. There will be a permanent replacement. You do not achieve a regime change, and this is spectacular hypocrisy, astonishing when we talk about an actual regime change.
Well, I mean, look, it's not as if the Russians have held back when it has come to trying to destabilize another country. You've done it with Ukraine. So I like the way that everyone's sort of preaching here without practicing.
Rahul,
apart.
No, come on.
Okay,
This is a different story, though. Look, right. We did not fly in, airlift. Vladimir Zelensky is alive and well, first and foremost. It's been 4 years, he's alive and well.
Yeah, after 5 assassination attempts.
That is a very different scenario.
Look, I mean, that's because you guys messed up in the first 48 hours of the war. You could have got Zelensky in a body bag.
No, we just don't do things in an American way.
Okay.
There's not one way to do things. This is exactly the problem.
Look, we've been down that Cold War chute earlier. So look, hang on. No, okay, look. I mean, we're talking about this particular instance right now. And I want to bring Ms. Cook back for a quick response. Meg Cook, you want to respond to Tatiana Kukureva, and then I want to bring in the doctor. Yeah, the good doctor, I might add. Yes.
Well, I think there's a lot of comparisons between what's happened in Afghanistan and even Ukraine and Russia. We're looking at a completely different region when we talk about the Middle East, and we have to be cognizant of that. We have a different president. We have somebody who has a backbone and leadership capabilities, and he's been very clear here. So these long drawn out wars is not something President Trump is going to do. He's been very clear to try and do this within 4 to 5 weeks, but he has a clear military objective. He wants to ensure Iran does not have nuclear weapons, not for his term, for generations to come. And it's up to the Iranian people who they decide to elect as their next leader.
Okay, so Dr. Ranganathan, this is about his legacy. This is about Trump being benevolent to the world and ensuring that we don't have horrible, and sorry to say, don't like to use adjectives, but perverse leadership imprisoning their own people and exporting terror.
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists. I could listen to this conversation for hours because I speak as a layman and there are experts out here. But there is a reason why I remain a layman because, pardon me, I disagree with 3 of the views put forward by the experts. They let me come one by one. As far as, Mehekji, who's a Republican analyst, says, well, yes, India should not condole the or express condolences at the death. Yes, she's right. I agree with her. But then America should be the last person telling us what to do, what not to do. Just barely a month after Pakistan perpetrated a dastardly terror attack on us, and we retaliated in Operation Sindoor that America did not support openly, you had President Trump welcoming the two perpetrators, barbarians of Pakistan, onto the White House. This is how much they respect India's identity and independence as far as it comes to combating terror. So let's not take lessons from America. Number two, as far as my good friend Tatiana ji is concerned, I'm coming one by one, so please pardon my ignorance out there. When she says it is up to the Iranians to decide who their leader should be, may I humbly disagree, because here was a supreme leader who was a commander of the Iranian armed forces that were directly or indirectly at war with Israel. He was a leader who was clandestinely enriching uranium, existential threat to Israel, who publicly said in 25 years, I want to wipe Israel off the map, who was supporting terror organizations that were perpetrating terror around the world, including Hezbollah and Hamas, who killed and maimed thousands of Israelis. Would he not be a legitimate target? I mean, replace Iran with Pakistan and Israel with India, and 100 out of 100 Indians would say if any Pakistani were to do exactly the same things, India has a legitimate right to go after him.
Yeah.
So that's point number two. Point number three is, let me come very quickly to two things that are arguments in favor of Israel and America and two against. In favor, they have awesome intelligence on the ground. We saw on day one, they eliminated 50 of the top Iranians. That speaks a lot about the intelligence that the Israelis and the Americans have. Number two, awesome firepower. There is no doubting that. Number three, majority of the Iranians are or were against this despotic regime. This is not to say this was the only despotic regime that has nuclear arsenal. Okay. There is hypocrisy there. I agree with Tatiana. But the fact is, I think Israelis and Americans are banking on from the ground up. The rebellion starts to topple the existing regime. The things that are against Israel and America is very simple. America, this war is not the same as Putin's war in Ukraine. In the last 3 years, conservative estimate says that 320,000 Russian soldiers, just the soldiers, not civilians, have been killed. Putin is prepared for a long, drawn-out war.
Okay.
I mean, which other country would accept 320,000 soldiers killed? Here, you have 10 body bags coming in, and Trump is going to have jitters. So that is one thing that is profoundly against. Please remember, America has never won a long drawn-out war. Vietnam, it lost 47,000
Sure.
US soldiers. We know how it ended.
Sure.
Afghanistan, we know how it ended.
Sure.
So unless this was going to be a quick war,
Okay.
it is going to be a disastrous war for America.
So